Manfred. Act 1, Scene 1. Manfred alone, scene, a Gothic gallery. Time, midnight. The lamp must be replenished, but even then, it will not burn so long as I must watch. My slumbers, if I slumber, are not sleep, but a continuance of enduring thought which then I can resist not. In my heart there is a vigil, and these eyes but close to look within, and yet I live, and bear the aspect in the form of breathing men. But grief should be the instructor of the wise. Sorrow is knowledge. They who know the most must mourn the deepest over the fatal truth. The tree of knowledge is not that of life. Philosophy and science, and the springs of wonder, and the wisdom of the world I have essayed, and in my mind there is a power to make these subjects to itself, but they avail not. I have done men good, and I have met with good even among men, but this availed not. I've had my foes, and none have baffled, and many fallen before me, but this availed not. Good or evil, life, powers, passions, all I see in other beings have been to me as rain unto the sands, since that all nameless hour. I have no dread, and feel the curse to have no natural fear, nor fluttering throb that beats with hopes or wishes or lurking love of something on the earth. Now to my task. Mysterious agency, ye spirits of the unbounded universe, whom I have sought in darkness and in light, yea, who do compass earth about, and dwell in subtler essence, ye to whom the tops of mountains inaccessible are haunts, and earth's and ocean's caves familiar things, I call upon ye by the written charm which gives me power upon you. Rise, appear. They come not yet. Now, by the voice of him who is first among you, by this sign which makes you tremble, by the claims of him who is undying, rise, appear, appear, if it be so. Spirits of earth and air, ye shall not thus elude me, by a power deeper than all yet urged, a tyrant's spell which had its birthplace in a star condemned, the burning wreck of a demolished world, a wandering hell in the eternal space, by the strong curse which is upon my soul, the thought which is within me and around me, I do compel ye to my will, appear!
Hello. Welcome, beautiful, wonderful listeners. I really appreciate you coming back for a little bit more. You're hungry for Byron. I can smell it. I can smell it in your breath. You've been drinking, and you want to listen. Or you've been smoking opium if you want to be really like Lord Byron, but I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Audience, that's what's called projection, the opium and the drinking, and anyway.
Well, I wish I had opium, dude, but I could smoke it out of a cigar like a 20s fucking cop, high on the job.
I could see you as a 20s cop high on the job getting slowly sucked into like a den of prostitution and just like opium, one of those long pipes that's like 1.5 feet and you're just in a permanent like semi-recline. I can picture this pretty easily actually.
Yeah, there's like Eastern Asian like prostitutes and there's a rooster running across the ground. What a life to live. But God, was I born in the wrong generation?
Yeah, you'd live to 34, get tuberculosis, and die. Yeah, it'd be fucking awesome.
Or if I wanted to be real Byronic, 36 and malaria, or something like that. But anyways, so when we last left off on our beautiful Byronic adventure, Lord Byron came back from his grand tour. He was pretty depressed, but he publishes the first 2 cantos of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, and within weeks becomes the walk of the, I don't even remember the fucking term. Long story short, everybody loves him. Everybody knows him.
The talk of the town. The talk of the town.
I was going to say that, or I was going to say like the cock of the walk. I think that's what I was thinking. So he's just the cock of the town, But anyways, his popularity explodes at this point. He's 24, he's in the zone, and this is kind of where, in the last episode we mentioned that he's regarded by many people as the first celebrity, and this is where you really see why. Like, because this is where the Byron branding begins. He starts commissioning these beautiful paintings of himself, where this is where a lot of the ones you'll see on Google Images come from. He starts making his own plates. And
Plates, like dinner
yeah,
plates?
yep.
All right.
And like he also starts really dressing the part too. Like the more he writes, the more he kind of flanderizes himself and and starts like distilling himself down to his most Byron. But with that fandom comes groupies. And the first half of this episode, we're going to talk about his life and a little bit about his poetry. But his life is basically for the next like 4 years until 1816. All of these stories are going to be intertwined with affairs and crazy stuff. This is going to be a weird episode because the first half we're going to be gossip girls, Will, you and I. We're going to be little
All right.
gossip girls.
I'm
And
ready.
the second half it turns into like a fucking spy movie. Like it goes
Okay, okay.
insane.
So,
Yeah.
but first of all, for this first half here, would it be accurate to say that he is self-exploiting and self-styling to like procure as many groupies as possible? Is that kind of the main
I
idea?
think the funny thing is the groupies are more of just they just kind of happen as a consequence of it. Really what it is the attention. Like it's Byron is kind of like an actor that never gets off the stage. Like he's very aware of his own image and how he comes across, and he kind of loves it. He loves being this like shadowy figure. This guy who so for example, we can actually jump right into it. So we're going to talk about through this episode 4 primary relationships that he has with women. And the natural place to start is Lady Caroline Lamb. Now, we mentioned in the last episode that at some point some nutcase decided to mail Byron some of her pubic hair, and she cut a little bit too close. There's some blood. That is Caroline Lamb.
Okay.
She
So good to put a face to a pubic hair.
put a face to a bush. Yep.
Yep. God.
Hey,
So, Miss Caroline Lamb, can we get a little more three-dimensional with her? Do we know
Yeah.
anything about her? Yeah. Okay.
we know quite a bit actually. So she was married to a man named William Melbourne, who we're not going to talk about him much, but fun fact, he actually ends up being the first prime minister for Queen Victoria. So he's he's not a nobody. He's there. He's wealthy, and she is not a very Regency era woman. Like in a lot of ways, she's a very modern woman. She doesn't have a lot of regard for the morals of the time. She's also much like Byron, very self-aware of her image. So for example, so she ends up reading Childe Harold's Pilgrimage like all these people do, and she is fucking starstruck. She loves it. And so she starts writing to Byron. And eventually, they end up going to a ball, not together, but they both go to this ball, right? And it's very telling. I'm not surprised Byron liked her because you want to know what happened when they first saw each other?
What happened, Richard? Give us the gossip column on these two.
So just imagine this like it's a movie for all the people listening. You're in this loud celebratory ball. People are walking around. You know Byron's there. You also know Caroline Lamb's there. He looks and from across the room catches her eye and she sees him. And you know what she does? She just looks away. Oh, boy, and Byron's taking it up
Sorry,
like a
sorry. For
doorstop.
those who are listening, I was just grotesquely licking my lips. Yeah.
Yeah, Will was giving Colonel Angus to the mic, and I kind of respect it.
Okay, so anyway, so her big thing is that she looked at him and she looked away. Why do I
Well,
feel like I'm missing something?
It's because she wants Byron, but she also kind of understands Byron, and Byron gets kind of suffocated when women throw themselves at him. Like the fact that she played a little hard to get and a little aloof, that got him going, and immediately he pursues her. So they end up starting to develop sort of a relationship. They went to other balls, afterwards. And for example, like she ends up, we mentioned before that Byron has a club foot. She ends up installing rope along the staircase so he can help himself up. Also, Byron can't dance naturally because of his condition, so he just kind of sits there menacingly. He's like, when you're in junior high and you have an anxiety disorder, so everybody's sitting there doing cool dances, and you're sitting there with your little Diet Pepsi can, wishing somebody would ask you to dance, and it doesn't come because you give a weird energy off.
You had a different middle school than me. I was sitting in the back with my full strength Coke, looking at my feet,
Oh,
hoping nobody asked me to fucking dance. So that we were a little different in that regard. Anyway,
uh, but yeah, so they end up starting this affair, and she's a very interesting woman because so first of all, the way she's described, she has these kind of like slim, like sharp features, these kind of big eyes, and the way that it was described to me in this audiobook I was listening to and another podcast, everybody just needs to diss this bitch so hard. They're like, she looked like a boy, and that's why Byron liked her. Like, and you look up some pictures, and I can kind of see it. Like she dress up like a page boy around him and stuff. And apparently Byron eventually felt comfortable enough to confide in her that he had same-sex attraction, that he had homoromantic feelings, and she obliges him. So she dresses like a page boy, which is Byron's thing. In fact, Byron says something very strange about, well, I'm not going to be judgmental. He says something very telling about her, which is that her voice sounds like John Edelstein. That's the choir boy he broke up with at the beginning of the first episode.
it's like I kind of like Arrested Development shit, like this eternal return to like the first person you loved. And I mean, like I guess I understand, but anyway, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it must have been very difficult, like with Byron's homosexuality or homoromanticism, where it's like when I get to know somebody for the first time, if they're interested in me romantically or whatever, we have to proceed through like all these different like airlocks of trust before I can just tell them like, yeah, I'm gay. Right? Because if you tell the wrong person that at this time and place, like you are fucked for sure.
Yeah.
And I often wonder, like, if part of the whole thing between Byron and all these groupies is that they were sort of like beards, right? It's like, well, I can't be gay. I mean, look at all these women that are,
Yeah.
Whatever. So, your thoughts?
I think that's pretty accurate. Now, to his credit, well, once again, to his credit, who cares? But like, I do think that he had sincere romantic and sexual feelings towards women. They just weren't as strong. But like, unfortunately, where he was, that was just the safest option. Ironically, it still wasn't safe because, um, God
Cult of
damn,
virginity and so on, like,
yeah,
purity culture and all that.
yeah. Well, so I just picked up the thing about Caroline Lamb is that she was a controversial figure as well because she was kind of like she was very messy. She was very I don't want to use the word crazy, but she's very high energy, explosive. I mentioned before that she doesn't conform to society, and she gets a reputation for it. In fact, her reputation will spill over into Byron's court and affect his life in a pretty dramatic way, which we'll get to very soon. So Byron ends up, so through her marriage, Caroline Lamb has a family member named Lady Melbourne. It's she's related to Caroline Lamb's husband, and Lady Melbourne here. I wrote down here she kind of reminds me of Varys from Game of Thrones, the bald guy. Like
Oh,
she
yeah.
is, she
Varys is
is.
my favorite. Varys rocks. I love Varys.
So
Anyway,
yeah. So do you want to know something they have in common?
I hope you're about to not say an interest in children.
No, no. No, thank
Sorry.
no. After talking about pederasty for 15 minutes last episode, I'm shocked that not every character in this fucking story is like that.
Okay,
But
okay. What do they have in common?
they're both nicknamed the Spider.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it makes sense because so I have a friend whose daughter loves that show, Bridgerton, and there's a character in that named like Lady Featherton or something like that, and she's this anonymous author that always reports on the gossip. That's kind of what Lady Melbourne is. Like, you don't want Lady Melbourne on your bad side because she will destroy your life. She'll make up
I
rumors
see.
about you. She'll uncover things. She's a nasty woman, but Byron takes a liking to her. Totally aromantically, like as he admires her and he develops a friendship with her, and she develops a friendship with him as well, and they talk a lot through letters. And it's funny because she likes Byron because Byron's this crazy famous figure, and he's very useful to her. He allows her to have more influence. Now, one thing to note is that Lady Melbourne did not like Caroline Lamb. probably because Caroline Lamb was having an affair on one of her family members with Lord Byron. Weirdly enough, because it's the 1800s, that means that Caroline Lamb's at fault and Byron's just a totally innocent passerby. It's just because they're assholes from heck end. Is all. Yeah. Clearly, this pure little boy Byron is being corrupted and seduced by this powerful force of evil. So Lady Melbourne, not Lady Melbourne. So Caroline Lamb, her behavior starts to escalate. Their affair, by the way, for context, it lasts about 5 months. And it starts getting heated because Caroline Lamb starts becoming very paranoid that Byron is cheating on her, which he probably was. And so she starts breaking into his house repeatedly to look through his drawers and stuff. And it's funny. We're going to have a character leap back from the past, John Hobhouse. John Hobhouse does not like Caroline Lamb very much.
That was Byron's best friend that he did the little tour with, and
Yes.
Eventually he had enough of like almost dying and shit, and so he was like, yeah, you're gonna go on from here. Okay, so now there's like it's like intramural competition for Byron, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Caroline, it all starts like boiling over when Caroline Lamb eventually screams at her husband, "I'm leaving you for Byron." And of course, he's just like, "Okay, bitch. Like, you do right. Like, what do you think he's gonna marry you? Like, whatever. Fuck it." And so she goes there, and she's like, "We should elope." And Byron's like, "Okay." And
this is what every groupie groomer's like worst nightmare is. It's like, oh shit, like now I have to do something. Fuck.
he's like, "Cool, yeah, that would be awesome, Caroline. I'm totally not bored of you at this point." And and it's funny. So I mentioned that Hobhouse he might be my favorite character in this whole story because he's just such a voice of reason. He's like a spirit. He's like his guardian angel. He's like the blue fairy from Pinocchio because the way it's described in the book, John Hobhouse just shows up. Like Byron's fear summons John Hobhouse out of the ether. And John Hobhouse is like, "Byron, don't do it, bro."
He's having a bros before hoes kind of moment with him. Yeah.
He's like, "Byron, I know you don't want to do this. You know you don't want to do this. We also know that you have bad boundaries with women, so you're probably going to do it. Please, for the love of God, don't."
So, of course, he does it, I'm guessing.
Actually, in a rare moment of reason on his part, he eventually drafts her a letter and breaks up with her. And it's actually not as brutal as you'd think. Like, he's somewhat respectful because there are qualities of Caroline Lamb that he really likes. The issue is that she's also just too much. Like, and also, like I said, we've mentioned this a million times. Byron just gets bored of women eventually. Like, it usually takes about half a year, and then he wants to move on. We'll see that with like everybody except for a character who now is going to be important, his half sister Augusta. So Augusta and Byron have always liked each other and have always admired each other. But about this year, when he's 24, 25, their relationship becomes physical. And that's really dangerous for Byron. It's about as dangerous as his homosexuality. Because if that were to spill out into the public, British people are nuts at this time. And they'll just drag you.
Who is this Augusta person again?
Okay, so her name is Augusta Byron. And she is the son of, I almost said Fairweather Jack, of Mad Jack Byron. So, Mad Jack Byron mentioned in the first episode.
So this is his half-sister.
Yes.
Okay.
From
so
his
now we're
father's
into the
first
incest.
Marriage.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
we are.
Great.
So they end up forming a physical bond. They end up having sex. And it's funny. Byron immediately hits up Lady Melbourne, the spider, and just tells her. He tells her everything. Like
the greatest gossiper ever. He's like, "Oh yeah, I fucked my half sister."
Yeah, he's like, "I've got this wheelbarrow."
He must want to be caught, like in some like unconscious Freudian way. Like he must be self-undermining here.
I think it's that. I think he also just wants to be seen. Like I think that he gets kind of a thrill from knowing that he's doing these things that are, according to society at the time, very deviant. And
the
also
no bad press kind of rebel leather jacket, kind of like who fucking cares attitude. Maybe.
Well, it's funny because Lady Melbourne had this reputation as a gossip, but she actually was. She did keep Byron's secrets. She didn't reveal this stuff because I think Byron was just so entertaining to have around and so useful that she didn't want to sever that connection. But she does say like, "Hey, like, dude, you told Caroline Lamb, that crazy bitch, that you're gay. Now you're telling me that you're sleeping with your sister. Like, this is dangerous." you are teetering on the edge of self-destruction, and this could become very bad very soon. Which it kind of goes there. Now, this entire time, so let's just go over the characters again real quick. We've
Yeah.
got Augusta Byron, who's his half sister, who's the one woman who he has like an endearing relationship with. We've got Caroline Lamb, the crazy lady who mailed her pubes. We have Lady Melbourne, the spider, who is by law a family member of Caroline Lamb. Now I'm going to add one more. Byron's future wife, Annabella Milbank. Now, Annabella Milbank is an interesting character. She is kind of the yin to Byron's yang. Actually, that might be the wrong way to phrase it. They're the opposites. Like, Annabella Milbank is a devout Christian. She is very into math. Byron would later nickname him. It's kind of corny, but his Princess of Parallelograms.
Oh, I'm that rocks actually.
It does.
That's
Yeah,
that's so
it is.
cool. Also,
And
Annabella Milbank, I think, is like the most Anglo name I've ever heard.
oh
Like it's
yeah,
up there. Yeah.
I think her name was Anne Isabella Milbank, but everybody called her Annabella. We're going to call her Annabella. Now, Byron, like we mentioned before, has all these affairs and crazy shit going on. Eventually, since Byron broke up with her, Caroline Lamb goes insane, and at a party, she breaks some glass and starts cutting herself with it, and then
Oh
grabs a
fuck.
pair of scissors and gashes her leg with it. And of
Jesus
course,
Christ.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is
Go on.
a huge scandal. It is a massive scandal. And it's kind of bleeds over into Byron's life, where now there's this huge risk of like, well, what if she spills the beans on the fact that I was, am a homosexual, and the fact that Byron's told. Oh, he also, by the way, tells Caroline Lamb that he's having sex with his sister. And it's funny. Lady Melbourne was like, "What are you doing?" Like, she was like, "Why are you fucking telling her?" She's like, "I'll keep your secrets." I don't think she can keep anybody's secrets. Like, it's super risky.
You ever heard that saying that the only way three people can keep a secret is if two of them are dead?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and then
And
just to be clear, I'm sorry, who was it that, cut themselves up?
Caroline Lamb, the lady
Okay.
who mailed her
Got
pubes.
it, got it,
Yeah,
got it.
sorry. After we move on from this phase, we're not going to have to deal with as many names. So at this point, Lady Melbourne, the spider, really wants Byron to marry Annabella Milbank, who, by the way, is her niece. And Byron meets her and they talk a little bit and they start exchanging letters. And Byron just doesn't really see it. He's like, she's kind of a pure soul, and I'm not. I'm the opposite of that. I am the Antichrist. So
I mean, part of him must have been a little excited about the chance to corrupt someone who like actually believes in God and purity and all of that.
funny enough, not really. You think he
Hmm.
would, but it's almost like a part of him is like, she's pure and I don't want to mess that up. Spoiler alert, he does really badly for the rest of her life. But so as the scandal's brewing up, the spider, so to speak, kind of takes advantage of the situation and is like, Byron, you're in a bad place. You need to like legitimize your life and get married so people can quell these rumors that you're sleeping with your sister, because you are. And so he actually decides to give it a shot with Annabella. So they end up going out up north, and he actually is surprised at how much he likes her, and she's surprised at how much she likes him. It's funny. She used to send him mail, and in it she'd mentioned, she's like, you're like a fallen angel, but I want to redeem you, because she's very, like I said, very Christian.
I
And
can fix him.
I can fix him. And Byron's such a dick.
You
Byron
definitely cannot fix him.
Byron thinks these letters are so embarrassing and hilarious that he just forwards all of them to the spider. He's like, this dumb bitch. Look at this dumbass. And they both just laugh at her behind her back.
Wait. So just to be clear, that's her aunt or whatever that he's
Yeah.
forwarding the mail to. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like, look at your dumbass family member. Wow, that's
Yeah.
brutal.
And yeah, it is pretty brutal. Well, hey,
These fucking sadists. Jesus.
we've only dipped our toe in brutal so far. So they end up going out, and Byron writes to the spider. He says, like, she's not quite as innocent as we both thought before, because they started banging. And eventually they decide to get married. So this is, by the way, now we are in January 12th or 2nd, 1815. So by the way, so he goes up north, right, with Annabella, and they decide to get married. Do you want to know where he goes as soon as they're done?
Where does he go, Richard?
He goes right back to Augusta. Which, by the
Solid.
way, after they end up sleeping together, they end up having a little honeymoon of their own up at Newstead Abbey, Byron's his family's historical property. And he described it as the happiest time in both of their lives. To his credit, I know it's gross. They are truly in love. And they do truly. Part of the reason why is because Augusta totally understands Byron in a way that is completely non-judgmental. And they grew up together. And also Byron seems to feel like they have this like metaphysical bond. In Byron's eyes, he idolizes his deadbeat. He idolizes a guy named Mad Jack, his deadbeat dad. And Mad Jack had an affair with his own sister. And so I think for Byron, he's kind of drawing the connections here. Because I also mentioned that little O'Brien, that Byron has this perception that he has this cursed heritage, right? And I think to him that adds to the drama, the metaphysical. A lot of this, by the way, a lot of the darker stuff of this will eventually bleed into Manfred, because I've got a couple lines from that I want to read later, but we're not
Sweet.
quite there yet. So Byron, they get married, and literally day one, it's pretty bad. Like they here's this one part of the story that literally while I was reading it made me laugh out loud, and I'll get to that. So day one, right? They get married. They're in the carriage, and Annabella, his new wife, and the mother of their future daughter, she's so happy, right? She's like, "Oh, my new husband." And Byron is just sitting there with vacant eyes, and eventually he looks over at her and just starts yelling at her. Immediately, he's like, why did I do this? He's like, we could have moved on from the rumors anyways. Like, I could have and now I'm stuck with you. Now I'm stuck in this life with you. And this is the part that made me
in public.
Well, they're in a carriage, but yeah. And immediately Annabella's like, oh, this is weird. This doesn't seem like a good omen. And speaking of bad omens, that night they end up consummating their marriage. And they're asleep, and there are these red curtains on the window at night. So there's this kind of eerie red glow spilling into the room. And at some point, Byron shoots up out of bed and is like, holy fuck, I'm in hell.
I have to commit to a woman. It's the worst.
No, he literally goes up and he's like, I'm in hell.
There are things I have to not do for someone else.
He is such a spoiled man, baby. This entire marriage, it's so bad. He's so mean to him or to her. And so, we're gonna get into I'm gonna put on a little stamp and just say I apologize in advance, audience, for the things that we must discuss. But we're gonna discuss. I apologize that you clicked play on this podcast. So, Byron and Annabella, Annabella at this point kind of knows about Byron's arrangement with his half-sister, but it's more like one of those things where she's like, oh, I hope it's just a rumor. Not a rumor, Will, because they all end up hanging out.
Oh,
and Byron,
to be a fly on the wall, dude. God.
I don't think you'd want to be one, because Byron starts pressuring her into having 3 ways with Augusta.
Okay, never mind. No, I'm out.
He has a bet to say. So he just, and it's fun. So Byron speaks to Hobhouse, right? And by the way, Hobhouse, he didn't like Caroline Lamb. Hobhouse likes Annabella because she is a sweet lady. She actually is. I've made jokes, but like Annabella is a victim of an abusive relationship, and like I do feel really bad for her, and she found herself in a really shitty situation. I had the debate with myself. I'm like, who's a worse husband and father, Byron or Mad Jack? And I thought about it, and I'm like, financially, Byron might be a bit better, but like, I think he might be worse than his dad when it comes to relationships. Like, because the thing about Mad Jack is at least Mad Jack liked women. Like, And so Mad Jack was
It's
guilty.
a start, right?
Yeah. Mad Jack was more of like the absentee, but I got the impression that he's the dude that shows up once every 5 years and he gives you the finger guns. And he's like, "Hey, buddy, what are you, like 9 years old now?" And you're like, "No, I'm 15." And he's like, "Okay." And he's like, he's drunk on PBRs, but you don't know that. And it's like, he's just a good time or whatever. Byron, Byron steps into a room. If you're a woman, the air gets sucked out of it. You get a little nervous if you're in a committed relationship with this man.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I was taking a sip of beer.
So, but hold on. Let's hit pause on this. So he has all these, kind of personal developments happening. He's going through this thing with his half sister where he feels like Augusta, she's my soulmate, but then I have to marry Annabella, and I'm terribly bored with her and all of that. And then also there's this Caroline Lamb person who is like mentally unstable. She's cutting herself, and eventually she'll be, sending pubic hairs and so on in the mail. And he's like, shit, I feel like fucking trapped. Okay, but what about the writing at the time? Like, what is he producing while all this shit is happening? Have we gotten to the better stuff yet, or is this a period where he's just distracted by all his bullshit and his drama?
He's absolutely still publishing shit. So around this time, I'm trying to think. He releases the Corsair, which is pretty solid.
Yep, yeah. Fun pirates. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't gotten to my personal favorite. He hasn't gotten to Manfred yet. I want to say that's 1818. I know that he writes it around the time that he writes it after he's semi-exiled from England, which a spoiler alert, but whatever. Most of the people listening probably already know a lot of that stuff. But so something I wanted to mention that I actually forgot to go over. So Caroline Lamb is no longer a player in his life. After he gets married, they start to like kind of cut off contact. Because Byron's bored of her. But something I wanted to mention is that she plays a big part in his life, in his memories. For those of you who've read Don Juan, she influences the character of Julia, who's one of the earliest kind of affairs that Don Juan has. And so I've got a line here that I want to read. It's in Don, and by the way, Don Juan has not come out yet. He ends up writing it like later. But in Canto 1, line 194, there's this weird part of Byron where, I mentioned he's a dick, but he's also weirdly emotionally intelligent not in the sense that he treats people well, but in the sense that he kind of understands their predicaments and their positions. So, for example, at some point, Julia is writing Don Juan letters, and she reflects on how hard it is to be a woman in a world where men can do whatever they want romantically and not really suffer the consequences of it. So she ends up writing, man's love is of his life a thing apart. 'Tis a woman's whole existence. Man may range the court, the camp, church, the vessel, and the mart. Sword, gown, gain, glory, offer in exchange. Pride, fame, ambition to fill up his heart. And few there are whom these cannot estrange. Man has all these resources, we but one, to love again and be again undone. And it's weird because it does seem like that Byron has almost some pity on Caroline Lamb when he represents her that way. It's almost like he realizes he's like, yeah, I guess I can be a human wrecking ball. And maybe he develops this sense after he becomes married. Because eventually his romantic escapades start to go down a little bit as he ages, as is often the story. Naturally, you kind of lose your libido a little bit once you start moving on your 30s and 40s. Well, depending on who you are, some people don't at all. But anyways, I just wanted to shout that part out. So we are at this point about halfway through Byron's marriage to Annabella. At this point, Annabella has realized that she is basically in prison. Like, her life is a living hell. Byron, once he gets into a relationship with her, starts very, very, very heavily drinking. And his behavior starts to get more aggressive, more erratic. I didn't find any examples of him being physically abusive, but he's very heavily emotionally abusive, yelling at her, cursing her. And
she's scared of him. Yeah. Okay.
And despite that, she ends up getting pregnant. And as she's God, it's so bad. So at some point she starts to, swell, and she gets to the point where she's going to have the baby. And Byron's so inconvenienced by the fact she's going to labor that he just leaves. And he goes to the local theater house because he was having an affair with an actress there. And he gets shithoused. And he ends up coming back. And while she's in labor, he's just throwing bottles at the wall.
Oh yeah, I remember you told me a bit about this. Yeah, he's so pissed about having to be a dad. Like, if you thought being married was a fucking drag, wait till you have a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about Byron, in the first episode, I can't remember if it was in the Lost episode or the one we ended up posting, but we speculated that Byron may have or definitely had borderline personality disorder. But the more I read about his marriage, there's such a, I mean, obviously it's abusive, but there's a level of anguish and anger that Byron feels that I almost think it might be something more or something different. I never got the impression. Oh, well, one thing is Annabella ends up consulting a doctor after she has her baby, specifically just to talk about Byron because she's worried about him. Because even though he's terrifying and she's sick of him, she does truly love him, and she was a good wife. And so she talks to this doctor, and she's like, yeah, he has this view that there is a malevolent being that runs the universe, and that he's being watched and tortured every day of his life. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think.
Wait. So who's saying this about Byron?
Annabella is saying this to a doctor. Yeah, his wife is saying this about Byron to a doctor. And
that he's paranoid, that he believes that there's an evil force in the universe which is fucking with him specifically.
Yes, and also specifically that he is an inherently corrupted being. He's a fallen angel. Now, knowing Byron, this could definitely just be some Byron drama, where he's hyperbolizing his statements, and he's like, yeah, the universe is evil, I'm a fucking demon, and whatever. But it's also like, I also wouldn't be surprised if he kind of believed that, like a Gnostic or something.
I can see elements in his writing that suggest that, he believes that, whether it's something he experienced or something he talked himself into, or just mental illness. I don't think he's pretending on that point. Mm-hmm. I'd never put it together like quite that explicitly, but yeah, it's a demon haunted world for Byron. Yeah. Absolutely. You definitely see that in Manfred and stuff. But anyway,
well, yeah, I was going to say that. Like, and like I said, I'm gonna wait till later, but mainly when he writes it. But Manfred is, like all of his writing, a little autobiographical, because there are moments where Manfred reflects on his own wickedness, and when I read it, and I will read it later, it does just sound like Byron talking about himself. Like, actually, you know what? Let's just get into it now, because it's good. I don't know. It kind of fits into the flow of the conversation.
Sure. So, and one thing I'll say real quick is the BBC has actually produced 2 radio dramas of Manfred, and I think I will post the older one to the channel after this comes out if anyone wants to listen to it. So
honestly, I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
So this is a specific line that just jumped out to me. It's in Act 2, Scene 1 of Manfred. So he writes, "What I have done is done, I bear within, a torture which could nothing gain from thine. The mind..." Let's just read it as a burp because I'm drinking. Okay. Okay. So he writes, "What I have done is done, I bear within, a torture which could nothing gain from thine. The mind which is immortal makes itself, requital for its good or evil thoughts. Thou didst not tempt me, and thou couldn't," these are hard words, "not tempt me. I have not been thy dupe, nor am I thy prey, but was my own destroyer and will be my own hereafter." And basically what he's saying, what Manfred's saying, is I'm not evil because cosmic forces made me this way. I'm not evil because of things I can't control. I am evil because I made evil choices, and I live with those choices. Everything that I have done has been conscious and deliberate. And it does kind of feel like Byron talking about himself.
Yeah. Nietzsche was really inspired by Manfred. I think he actually wrote a piano piece about Manfred, and Robert Schumann wrote an actual good piano piece for Manfred as well. But yeah, I mean, there is, like, later with Nietzsche, like, you have the idea of amor fati, or love your fate, where, you know, the authentic person or the noble soul or whatever is the one who affirms everything that happens in their life, good and bad, you know, who takes total ownership of all of their choices and all of the consequences of their choices, and lives life in such a way. This is Nietzsche's idea of the eternal return, or the eternal recurrence, where you want to live in such a way that if you were forced to live your entire life over, you would choose yes to do it. That you would want to be reincarnated as yourself, in other words. And so, yeah, I can kind of see the overlap. Although here Byron is 50 years ahead of Nietzsche. And like, you know, Bertrand Russell comments on this in his chapter about Byron and the history of Western philosophy, where Byron went on to inspire a lot of this thinking about like the romantic soul, which, you know, cuts all ties with reason or society or custom or tradition, and lives purely on its own terms. It's sort of a prototype of the existentialist rebel, you know, like the Albert Camus like Sisyphus figure, or something like that, you know. And so anyway, yeah, I can see some of the lines coming together there. Sure.
Yeah. Well, and Lord Byron was a libertine. Like, he lived life for pleasure, and he indulged in it in a way where I think he almost couldn't even help it. In fact, you want to know who he personally was a fan of? At least whose writings he was a fan of? The Marquis de Sade.
Right, naturally.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, it's also it's fitting because the Marquis de Sade's writing wouldn't have been that old by this point. Like, it would have been like, you know, listening to your dad's old records. If your dad, actually, a better way to put it is it'd be like finding your dad's old Playboys. Which, by the way, Dad, if you listen to it, don't worry, I'm not accusing you of having Playboys. It's not autobiographical on my part.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Yeah, my dad's a good man, a pure man. Anyways, so at this point, it's now about 1815. So Byron's 27. So his daughter, who we're not going to talk about that much, but for those of you listening, he ends up naming his daughter after he's done throwing bottles at the wall. By the way, this is such a fuck you to his wife. He names his daughter Augusta.
Oh my God. Oh shit.
Yeah.
That is fucking terrible. Oh
yeah.
God. The capital I implications, dude. Ew. Fuck.
Oh, I know. Well, it's funny. So, you know, obviously or Augusta grows up and she later goes by her maiden name, or her mom's maiden name, Ada Lovelace. And it's funny because Ada Lovelace.
Oh shit. Ada Lovelace. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We brought up Alan Turing in the last episode. Speaking of pioneers in computing, Ada Lovelace is Byron's daughter.
God, yeah, that's such a crazy fact. Fuck. Yeah.
Well,
say just a little bit about Ada Lovelace.
I honestly haven't looked that much into her. I know that she died. I know that she lived a similar, not similarly, but also a reckless life. She was a gambling addict, but she was also, much like her mother, an incredibly outstandingly talented mathematician. And like I said, she was a pioneer in computer science and or not computer science, but computation.
Yeah, Ada Lovelace is sometimes credited as being the first computer programmer. The earliest computers, like if we think about a programmable like machine capable of carrying out like pre-established tasks, the earliest computers were rug weaving auto looms, actually, because what would happen is the design for, say, like a Persian rug would be copied and stored in this like unfathomably complicated series of different, you know, sewing apparatuses. And you could basically print out a rug on one of these, like, you know, the equivalent of like a multi-million-dollar rug machine. And so Ada Lovelace sort of came in and improved that process, and is often credited with having written, like, quote unquote, the first computer program in an era like well before, you know, transistors or screens or anything like that. So that's a whole topic unto itself, of which I'm not an expert. But yeah, Ada Lovelace is a pretty big deal. Is usually regarded as a sort of wasted genius, you know, somebody who like could have gone on to do so much more, was tamped down because of her being a woman and wrong place, wrong time in history, blah blah blah. But yeah, that's so that she's connected to Byron is pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. She does not like Byron. I wonder why. She's not a fan. That's why she changes her name. She's also not a fan for a very long time of her aunt Augusta, for somewhat obvious reasons. But it's funny. Actually, you know what? I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's keep going. So we're getting to the point now where Annabella, even though she loves Byron, is at her wit's end. Because like I said, he is just a monster to her. And it kind of spills over, and she says, like, she gives him the ultimatum. This isn't even an ultimatum. She's just like, I think I should leave. And Byron's like, yeah, I agree. And so she ends up going back to live with her father, and her father ends up mailing him basically divorce documents. Now, at the time, Byron's like, what the hell? You want to divorce me? What the heck? How did this end up happening? Look at it. He's such a prick. He's such a
yeah. Who could have seen this coming? Yeah. Wow.
What the heck? You want to get divorced from me, the guy that was throwing glass bottles at the wall while you were in labor? And so he's kind of surprised by it, but he's immediately fucking furious at her. And he's like, "Oh, you want to take this to court? We'll take this to court." And Annabelle is not a vicious person, but she's like, "Hey, knock, knock, Earth to Byron. You've told me so much horrible, immoral shit you've done. Like, do you really want this to go to court?" And she ends up.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. She's got a lot of leverage.
Yeah, and you know what? I will give her credit. She actually does not publicly bring up Byron's affair with Augusta. It's not like she wants to smear his name through the dirt. She just wants to be free. She just wants to be emancipated from this asshole. Mm-hmm. But one thing that she does bring up is the homosexuality. At some point while they were married, she's like, he alludes to something like that. I mean, once you've had like a three-way with his half sister, you're probably like, yeah, he's doing a lot of crazy shit. So she asks him, she's like, are you gay? And he's like, not in England, I'm not. He says, yeah. No, he literally says,
what happens in Turkey stays in Turkey. Yeah.
That is almost exactly what he said. He's just like, no, I haven't done anything like that since I got back.
Yeah.
And Annabelle is just like, it's kind of like that scene in Zoolander. Like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. She's just like, how much more information can I absorb about this man?
What is this? An opium den for ants?
It's the ants? It's going to be at least 3 times this big. Yeah, so there is a massive, this is 1816, by the way, so Byron's 28. There is a massive scandal, obviously, because one thing she does accuse him of is attempting to sodomize her. And which, naturally in that time, even if you're doing it with a woman, is basically an indicator to those people that you're a closet homosexual.
Yeah, the portal to hell, that is the butthole. The instant anal felony. Yeah, geez.
Not if you ask Alistair Crowley.
The state of Texas had anti-sodomy laws until either 2003 or 2005. Fun
Jesus
fact.
Christ.
Yeah. So we're not even really fully at escape velocity from fear of the butthole. But anyway, moving on.
And I thought it was bad that England didn't get rid of those laws until the 70s. Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, so another thing.
Anyone at home interested in the Texas thing, just look up Lawrence versus Texas in Wikipedia. Go ahead, Richard.
So one thing that I forgot to mention is that one of the breaking points for Annabella, his wife, is much like Caroline Lamb. She starts rummaging through his shit, and she finds opium, and she finds a copy of the Marquis de Sade. And that's
hipster go bag. The fucking cool kid bug out bag. Just an opium pipe and a Marquis de Sade paperback.
Boy lunch.
Yeah, boy lunch. A flask of fucking absinthe. A one-man wizard picnic.
Dude, girls hate how little it takes to make men happy. Okay, moving on. So, obviously, this is a massive scandal in England. Oh wait, there's one other thing that I have to do. I'm sorry, it's just 3 lines. There's another line from Manfred, which I'm not connecting to anything. I literally just wrote down another badass Manfred line
Oh yeah.
as the title. It's 3 lines. Sorrow is knowledge. They who know the most must mourn the deepest or the fatal truth. The tree of knowledge is not that of life. And I was like, ooh, Byron, what the hell?
Yeah, yeah. Another very Nietzschean line.
Yeah.
Nietzsche's condemnation of loafers in the Garden of Knowledge, and that or there's this line from the Old Testament from Ecclesiastes. They who increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow, and it's like, yeah, like there's a whole strain of like intellectual pessimism of, wow, like the more you read, like the worse it gets, and then someone who's read even more comes up behind you and goes, always has been, and points the pistol at the back of your head. And yeah, I mean, it's like a mid-grade kind of realization where you're like, oh yeah, like we are kind of living at the edge of a Lovecraftian volcano of horrible shit at all times. But anyway, yeah, I actually read that line right at the beginning, so it's interesting we came across the same thing and liked it.
Oh, hey,
anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, so naturally, as I'm sure everybody listening can gather, this is bad for Byron. Like, suddenly the floodgates have opened, and everything that he was afraid of people finding out about, they're finding out about. And people are not happy. Like I said, we mentioned in the last episode that when Byron first came back to England, there was a huge incident where there was a place where like men could openly practice homosexuality in secret. And it got busted, and all those men were put in the shackles, and they had feces thrown at them. Like, we were at a point where British people, if they get a whiff of homosexuality, turn into screaming apes and grab clubs and drag you out of your house and beat you within an inch of your life, if not kill you. And there are people, literally, like, imagine being a British person in that era. You read about Lord Byron, and you're like, honey, hi to the kids. I'm going clubbing with the boys. We're going out. I need to hit something because Byron's gay. I mean, this is like people in Boston or something. It's just like, well, we need to go commit acts of violence because I know now that this guy likes boys. This is so naturally, the heat's turned up so high that Byron is like, I got to get the fuck out of here. Like, I got to get the hell out of Dodge. So he ends up doing
Does the divorce go through though? Like,
it goes through,
right.
And Annabella gets custody of their child. And which is very rare, much like with Byron's dad. It's very rare for that time because in the day,
back then you have to really fuck shit up bad as the male in the marriage, and in order to lose track of the kid. Yeah,
and he did bad. So he ends up leaving, and it's kind of nice. Like he goes to the shore with John Hobhouse, and John Hobhouse is like, it's been a good time, Oh, something I forgot to mention about John Hobhouse, not to go back to Byron throwing bottles at the wall. So Annabella confides in John Hobhouse because, like I said, they're kind of friends. They like each other. She's like, Byron. She tells him what Byron did, and John Hobhouse is like, "Ugh!" And so John Hobhouse goes to the house and is like, he doesn't see any scratches on the wall or anything. So he's like, oh, Annabella, he wasn't throwing bottles at the wall. He has this thing he likes to do where he takes a cane and he knocks the caps off the bottles. That's all he was doing. And on the one side, John Hobhouse is a pretty honest, nice guy. On the other hand, he will always go to plate for Byron. And like, I kind of think that Byron did do it because in the future, after Byron dies, John Hobhouse takes all of his manuscripts, all the letters they exchanged, and he gets a lot of the letters from friends and lies to him. He's like, oh, we just want to set something up for Byron, and he burns all of it. Like, the thing about Hobhouse is he's a homie, and he does a lot to protect Byron. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. So Byron ends up going down to the shore with John Hobhouse, and they're just like, they fist bump, they hug, and Byron's like, deuces, dog. I don't know if I'm ever coming back. And spoiler alert, he never will come back to England. It's 1816. He's now 28 years old. So he ends up getting on a boat with a guy named John Polidori. Are you familiar with him?
No, never heard of him.
He's a mediocre writer. There's a reason you haven't heard of him. I didn't heard of him before I started studying this shit anyways.
But just hold on. So with 1816, 1817, 1818, this is the meat. This is where it starts to get real with Shelley, both of them. So here we go.
Yeah, this is when he starts to form a good friendship with Percy Shelley. And in that time frame you just mentioned, that's when the event that everybody knows about, whether you know anything about Byron or not, when they are all in Switzerland or Geneva, and they have the spooky night, where it's too spooky. Hey, spoiler, hey, people listening, it's going to get spooky. So
you better light some at home. You better light some candles. You better close those drapes.
Yeah. When we get to that scene, imagine that the lights are turned off in my room and I've got a flashlight right under my face and I'm telling spooky stories to you. Mm-hmm. But anyways, there's something I wanted to say about John Polidori. I don't know why, but reading about John Polidori, I just wanted to bully him. Like I wanted to just slap his books right out of his hands and throw a football at the back of his head. He's such a fucking nerd. So
what did he do to earn your swirly wrath? What's going on?
Well, I'll tell you. So at some point, it's funny. So he's an aspiring writer too, right? And he's not the worst, but
disgusting. Fucking imagine being an aspiring writer.
Imagine chasing
the most
your dreams,
depraved of all creatures. Yeah. Imagine being a fucking starving artist, bohemian, fucking intellectual scumbag. Jesus. Fuck.
What's funny? So at some point he's writing some dramatic pieces, right? And John Hobhouse writes too. John Hobhouse is more of an activist than a writer, but he does write. And John Polidori shows his dramatic writing to Byron and Hobhouse. And apparently they both just drop it and start laughing.
I was going to say, prepare for the most abject fucking humiliation ever. You're going to hand Byron your writing. Oh, Christ. Yeah.
Byron might as well have walked behind him, wrapped his arms around his waist, and suplexed him into the wall. Like, he just... Imagine not just, pouring your heart out into something and writing it and trying to get, like, approval. Like, imagine not only getting roasted, but being roasted by Byron.
Yeah, right. Like you meet your hero and your hero hates you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if you love football or something and you go and meet, like, I don't know, anybody, like you meet like
you couldn't
a famous
think of a football player right there.
I'm a fucking nerd, dude.
Okay, I got the metaphor. Here's the metaphor. So there's this is real, by the way. So I think like 2 years ago, there was this YouTube video made inside the Studio Ghibli headquarters where these guys had come. Yeah, these guys had come to pitch Hayao Miyazaki on this new animation technique. Do you know what I'm talking? Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So these guys come in and they're doing their presentation and they throw up on the screen a zombie creature that is like horribly deformed and is like limping along the ground in like this grotesque crab-like way where it's like dragging itself with its head and it's just flailing around like a weird jellyfish or something. And they're explaining that what they've done is they've made an artificial intelligence algorithm using the rig of a human body, like all of the joints and stuff of a human body, but without any kind of pain sensor. And so they've created a simulation of how like a zombie with no sense of balance would move. And it's like, again, like this weird, disgusting, like human jellyfish thing that's like spasming its way across the ground. And they're showing this to like Hayao Miyazaki, the lead editor and writer of the Studio Ghibli movies like Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke and stuff. And they're talking about how much they've always loved Miyazaki's films and that it made them want to be an animator and that he's their biggest inspiration. And they're like, we'd like to submit this technique to you in the hope that it'll be useful to you in one of your films. And they finish the presentation and Miyazaki is just like looking thoughtfully off into the distance. And he says in Japanese, "I feel strongly that this work is an affront to human nature, that this is the worst thing I have ever seen." And he goes on about how fucking awful it is and how it's the opposite of art, that it's degrading, and how he will never ever use anything like it in any of his movies, and he hopes that they give up on it. And just delivers it like the most like stern grandfatherly way imaginable for like an old grumpy Japanese guy. And the camera goes back and you can see the look on their face, and it's just like the blood is draining out of their cheeks, light is leaving their eyes. Like
they have just been pill, my man.
Yeah, they have just been spit roasted by their hero.
Dude, if you think that's bad, have you ever heard Hayao Miyazaki talk about his son?
No.
Dude, so his son, when I was in high school, his son made an animated movie published by Studio Ghibli as well, and it was called Tales from Earthsea. And I saw it, and I haven't seen it since I was in high school, but I remember liking it well enough. Hayao Miyazaki, like 20 minutes into the movie, stood up and walked out. It's his own son. He's like, "This is so dog shit."
Oh,
That also reminds me, the story you just told reminds me. Have you ever seen? Fun fact. Hey, a little sneak peek at a future episode, maybe. Have you ever seen when David Lynch talks about George Lucas pitching him to like direct the Star Wars movie?
no, I don't know that one.
So David Lynch is like, yeah, George Lucas came up to me and he said, hey, David, you want to have a conversation? And I was like, okay. And I was eating my salad and I went up there. He's like, we went to a restaurant. It was a place that only did salads. They only made salads. So I was having this salad and he is trying to explain to me this thing. I think it's called a Wookiee. And he's like, I felt this pain in the back of my head and my hand kind of started shaking like this. He's just I love that interview so much. He's trying to explain to me this thing I think it's called a Wookiee. Also,
just trying to picture this conversation,
Well, also, I love that, like, David Lynch is the guy. This is after he made Eraserhead, and George Lucas is like, he's the Star Wars guy. Okay, well, let's get back into the Byron shit. So anyways, when we last left off, 1816, Byron's 28. He and Hobb has Desperados to John Polidori. And unlike last time, he doesn't do a lot of exploring. He kind of goes straight to Lake Geneva, where he meets up with a couple of people, all of whose names will probably sound familiar. We've got Percy Shelley. We've got Mary Shelley. And also there's also Mary Shelley's stepsister named Claire Claremont. And we won't talk about her too much.
Claire Claremont?
Yeah, no, it's that
John
bad.
Johnson.
Claire Claremont, who at some point Byron ends up impregnating before this all happens. And it's funny, dude, it was such a pity fuck. If you look at pictures of her, she's pretty bland. And Byron,
You're going to get canceled from 200 years ago for that. Holy fuck. He couldn't possibly have been into her, dude. I've seen those etchings.
No, here's the thing. Byron was pretty plain. Byron. He's not. Byron is a capital W, capital R woman respecter, So, no, he's not. So it's funny. So she made advances to Byron every single day after they met. And Byron has no interest in her. And one day he's like, will you leave me alone if I lay pipe, basically? And she's like, yeah. And then they get pregnant. And he's just like, great. I love my life. God is
just another child support payment until I die.
Exactly.
Yeah,
well,
the 19th century equivalent.
On the bright side, if there's anything I learned from Mad Jack, it's that they hadn't invented child support
yet. No, definitely not.
And so
all they can do is come to you and blackmail you and extort you for money. That's the only real maneuver left.
Mm-hmm. So we'll get into his relationship with Claire Claremont a little bit. I literally didn't even list her in the list of women he had engagements with because he was so insanely disinterested with her from the get-go. So they all go up to Lake Geneva, and it's summer actually, but the weather is notoriously bad. And it's interesting. I don't remember the name of the volcano, and I didn't do my research because I don't get paid enough for that. But there was this volcano in Indonesia.
He's a 50% partner audience, for the record. So.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Will texted me earlier today, and he's like, dude, we're making the money. And I was like, give me my half of that penny right now.
I did not say anything about making money. Also, it's Krakatoa, dude.
Oh, never mind. You said we're making numbers.
Yes, numbers, not money.
Yeah. I don't know if the people listening know this. We actually just crossed 50 million listeners.
Yeah. We actually have a quarter of the planet Earth tuned in right now.
Yeah. Will and I are actually recording this in our own separate sensory deprivation tanks, and we've got wires hooked up to our brain.
An entire trailer just for recording podcasts, and it's got all my favorite little sculptures and beef jerky sticks. Yeah.
Yep. I recently bought a chateau in Belize, and I am going to I'm going to do a coup. I'm going to take over. And I'm going to start my own country dedicated purely to this podcast.
I have taken out a huge loan and bought a private jet, and I'm filling it with Instagram models, and we are making a honeypot for high net worth individuals.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, audience, I hope you're down for this awesome journey when the documentary about our murder suicides come out. after Will and I turn on each other for 100% ownership of
this is going to be really fucking interesting when it becomes a Netflix limited series.
Monster, the Will and Richard story.
Yeah, who knew? The twin internet killers.
The title of it's going to be "If Only You Knew."
Their obsession with Lord Byron, a dangerous precedent.
Yeah, a copy of Childe Harold's Pilgrimage and Opium was found in Will's drawer.
And that's the moment he started talking to the absinthe demon.
The absinthe demon.
Neighbors reported flashes of green light every night at midnight in his apartment.
Son of Will.
He started publishing strange epigrams on his quote-unquote Substack.
What is he stacking?
Yeah.
We'll never know. But yeah, so they end up going to, I guess, quote-unquote Krakatoa, whatever that fucking means, Will, exploded like a nuclear bomb and basically just spread. It affected the world for like a year straight. We're just across the globe. Like, people were experiencing abnormal weather and shit. So Byron, the Shelleys, and that dumbass Claire Claremont spent a lot of time, and John Palladori, that fucking nerd. I wish I could go back in the past just to dunk his head right in a toilet. Just
you got a little Byron in you. You do.
I do. I think I do. Honestly, I would go there. I would travel back in time just to bully John Palladori with Byron. I wouldn't kill Hitler. I wouldn't go meet Cleopatra. I would just shove Palladori's head right into a toilet. That's it.
I would go back in time and talk to Shelley and ask him whether it's true that he believes that the right, proper, and most manly way to fuck is by nutting literally as soon as physically possible, because spending any more amount of time in the sack is feminine and soft and, emasculating.
He's like the anti-Taoist. He's just got zero juice in him.
Yeah, no, like spending more than 37 seconds on sex actually just makes you a bitch, according to Shelley.
That is such a cope on Shelley's part.
Poor Mary. No wonder she got into books.
But anyways, on one particularly bad night, and for anybody here who like went to high school, you've probably heard of this story. If you're learning about Mary, because I don't know, did you have to read Frankenstein in high school?
No, we dodged that one in favor of Dracula. So I still haven't read Frankenstein. I read the first page and I was like, this is sick. And then every other thing in life stopped me from reading the rest. But yeah, would be totally up to do that sometime.
The modern Prometheus. Hell yeah. No, I actually had the flip side experience. I read Frankenstein. I've never read Dracula before.
Dracula's not that great. It's really not. It's perfectly skippable. And Fair enough. Wish people would. So anyway, honestly, I probably got the wrong end of that deal. But yeah,
I liked Frankenstein when I was in high school. I liked it because obviously as a kid, I always imagined Frankenstein as this big lumbering monster with two bolts sticking out of its head. But like the Frankenstein in her book, the actual one, the Frankenstein's monster. I'm sorry, internet nerds who are probably pissed off about that. I'm sorry, I'm antagonizing. I'm producing invisible enemies to fight them.
I was gonna say you've got the internet equivalent of the head cop, you know.
Like I said at the top of this episode, I'm hungover and I just need to punch something as hard as I can. So to keep it healthy, I'm just gonna imagine doing it to John Palladori. But yeah, so the monster in the original Frankenstein is very thoughtful and communicative, and he suffers a lot, and you feel bad for him. He's just like he's literally, he comes back to life and is just like, I'm a hideous abomination, dude. Why did you make me? And like, I'm alone. Like, can you at least make me like a friend? And Frankenstein's like, nah.
No, I'm not doing this twice.
Frankenstein, a man who was basically Ed Gein and assembled a bunch of dead body parts together and brought it life, was like, wow, this is actually the scariest moment of my entire life. I don't know what he expected.
Yeah, and now he's made an Adam with no Eve, and what do you expect to happen?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what happens. He gets stalked by it for the rest of his life, and it kills his fiance. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
But so on a particularly bad night, they all group up together, and it actually sounds like a lot of fun. Byron, the Shelleys, John Palladori, they are telling each other like old German ghost stories. And like I said, that's and when they're trying to like spook each other out. So at some point, what's his face, Percy Shelley, his scary story is about a woman with eyeballs for nipples. That's
Sorry.
ooh, like I said, audience, spook alert, spooky spook. You're getting spooked.
Reminded of that
Yeah.
creature from Pan's Labyrinth at the
Oh, yeah.
banquet table with the eyeball hands. Yeah.
Yeah, except for in this case, it's just a wet T-shirt contest, and you're like, oh, holy shit.
All right. Okay. So that's Percy. What's
Yeah.
next?
So yeah, then we get Frankenstein, and this is the reason why I think John Palladori is a fucking pathetic nerd. So Byron tells this story because he went to Albania and he went to the Balkans and shit, and the vampire is a legend that he heard about there. Except for in their legends, it's not the modern romantic vampire. It's more like a Nosferatu. It's like a hideous carrion that like eats dead bodies and drinks blood. Like that's kind of what I liked in the Robert Eggers
Oh yeah.
Nosferatu is that he's not this suave handsome guy who like bites into your neck. When he attacks the dude or like drinks his blood, he's gnawing on his chest like an animal, like
Yeah.
an animal eats.
The Eggers movie. I mean, all of Eggers' movies are good. Nosferatu is really solid and really creepy, and I had a pretty good time with it.
So I really liked it.
Just a very like heavily streamlined like gothic horror movie. No frills, no spinning rims, no unnecessary bullshit. Just like a maximally aerodynamic like period horror piece, and really great use of shadows. Really
Yeah.
cool like cinematography and music, and but honestly, like the best Eggers movie that I've seen at least is The Northman. That movie is like
Oh, it was so
almost
badass.
perfect. Yeah.
The entire time I was watching it, every single time it would cut to a landscape of like a frozen volcano or something, I just thought about "Immigrant Song" by Led Zeppelin. Like it was so awesome.
Honestly, this is a very dweeby association, but the music made me think of Skyrim a lot.
Oh yeah.
Like all the Nordic chanting and stuff. And
Yeah.
you don't have to do it.
Yeah. It reminded me of The Witcher too.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah, TOO, of course. It actually reminded me of The Witcher 3. But God, that soundtrack's so good. But anyway, so Byron ends up telling this story of a British man who goes to Romania and comes back into British society and is secretly he's been turned into a vampire. But like I said, like with all of Byron's writing, he makes it basically Lord Byron. Where he's more handsome, there's a reason why he could sneak back into society. And I mentioned why I like bullying John Palladori. Like 3 years later, I think it's 1819, he writes the book Vampire with a Y. And not only is it just him copying that story, he actually signs it as Lord Byron. He claims Lord Byron wrote it because it does sound he's basically just copying Lord Byron. And I'm like, you fucking dork. Come on. Like he copies him so hard he forgot to change the name on the test,
Low effort cheating.
Now Lord Byron and this dude are going to detention, and I bet you Lord Byron's not happy about it. Actually, he wasn't happy about it. But anyways, so Byron's friends with Percy and Mary, and Percy admires him. They have a kind of an odd relationship. It's not like John Hobhouse. Percy he kind of switches between liking and disliking Lord Byron, and I don't blame him for that, to be honest, because Lord Byron sounds a little hard to be around sometimes. But the issue is, like I said, Claire Claremont, idiot name, is the
It was originally my point, so I have to take responsibility for that one.
So Claire Claremont is Mary Shelley's stepsister, and they're all kind of like Byron. Yeah, so like they're like, Byron, you keep saying it was a pity fuck, but can you please just take responsibility for the fact that you put a baby in this woman? And Byron's like, why don't you check the case of my first marriage and then figure out what I'm going to do with this baby? By the way, something interesting. It's disputed whether or not Byron had 3 children or 2. So if the stories are to be believed, Byron's first child is Ada Lovelace. His second child is the child that's born to Claire Claremont, who they end up naming Allegra. Because
Okay.
at this point,
All
Byron
right.
started visiting Vienna and loved it. Or sorry, not Vienna, Venice. He started visiting Venice and he loved it. And because according the way that he describes it, it sounds like Las Vegas. It's just like if you have a vice, you can take care of it in Venice. He literally calls Venice sea Sodom. Like,
Yo,
which
okay,
yeah,
I have to throw out this one detail. So like I had the good fortune of actually traveling like to Florence with my Renaissance history professor, Ada Palmer. And she told me something I will never forget about Florence, which is that back in the 13th and 14th centuries, Florence was so famous for anal sex that they invented a new verb, to Florentine, which means to have anal sex. So
so
when you said sea Sodom, I'm like, well, the
yeah,
land Sodom would be Florence, but yeah.
yeah. So you could say whatever. I had a joke and I forgot it. I think I'm developing dementia.
Maybe it's all the
But yeah,
drinking and smoking.
nah, that doesn't make any sense.
he,
Anyways,
he just had the most dead look in his eye, audience, chat.
I'm a public intellectual, Will. I have to drink and smoke.
That's
I'm
true.
now a
Yeah.
public intellectual.
Yeah, you are. Okay.
As is obvious by my sublime shirt with my hard nipples put into it.
The voice of a dysfunctional generation.
Exactly. Okay, so yeah. What was it? They were gonna call her like Albie. Yeah. So originally they wanted to name her Albie because Albie was a nickname they had for Byron after he came back from Albania. But Byron's like, no, that's weird. Let's name her Allegra, which to be fair, it's a better name. It's a pretty cool one. So during this time as well, Byron actually completes Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. He completes the third canto of it. And guess what? We're almost getting to Manfred. Actually, I think no, yeah, sorry. Is this between 1817 and 1819? He writes Manfred, and he also completes Childe Harold's Pilgrimage. But anyways, so he ends up going to Venice because, like I said, it was a place where Byron's lifestyle was more acceptable there. It's not Regency leaning into Victorian England where it is just a minefield. If you deviate even slightly from the norm, in Venice he can kind of make a home there.
Way more laid
And
back.
yeah, exactly. And like I said, when he moves to Venice, that's when he publishes Manfred. And this is when I was going to initially bring up that line because something that you notice about Byron during this time is he starts to lose his passion a little bit, like not necessarily for writing, but just the lifestyle that he lived. Because something that's worth noting is Augusta, if you're wondering what happened to her, she kind of stops returning his letters because Annabella, his ex-wife, and Augusta form kind of a relationship, a friendship. It's kind of a weird one, though, and I kind of feel bad for Augusta because I mentioned that Annabella loved Byron and wanted to redeem him. After he leaves, she wants to redeem Augusta. And
Yeah, I'm
really
guessing
gets
Augusta and Annabella like go to compare notes and they triangulate all the different ways that Byron's just an asshole. Yeah.
kind of. Well, so since she's not responding to him as much, he's kind of depressed because, like I said, she was kind of his best friend. Like aside from Hobhouse, they had a really strong relationship. Something I'd actually like to say about Annabella is respect to Annabella. After she and after like as time goes on, after Byron leaves, she becomes like a strong evangelical, but she also becomes an abolitionist. Like she and a feminist a little bit. Like she decides that she starts working for some really good causes. She is a good lady. Like I felt so bad for her reading about it, but Byron doesn't like good ladies. Byron likes fun ladies, and he ends up meeting a sort of fun lady in Venice. He meets the woman who would kind of be his last fling, his last flame, Teresa Guccioli.
Guccioli.
So Teresa, hello, back from the break. So when we last left off, Byron was, wigging out in Venice, loving his life. And something I wanted to mention is that, so he starts this relationship with Teresa Guccioli. And it's a very dangerous affair because we'll see a pattern here that Byron tends to like married women. But unfortunately, her husband, let me check the name real quick. I've got it written down here somewhere.
I'm reminded of this line from Casino Royale, the 2006 one with James Bond, where or the 2006 James Bond one with Daniel Craig, where he's on the train with Vera, the Ava Green character, and she's the sort of the standoffish like femme fatale, and she's like the banker that's in charge of like keeping track of the money and shit, and she's bantering back and forth about how he's got a chip on his shoulder because he grew up in an orphanage and all this. And, finally, Daniel Craig goes, well, I'm afraid you're just not my type. And she has this kind of superior look on her face. She goes, what, smart? And he goes, no, single. Meaning, I only fuck married women.
It's a type of dude, and Byron fits into that mold.
It guarantees no attachments, I guess, at least in theory.
Fair. Well, in Byron's case, it also brings up the possibility of you being dragged into an alleyway and stabbed 57 times, which doesn't happen, spoiler, but that's not how he dies. I think we alluded in the last episode to how he dies in Missolonghi, but we'll get there. So her husband, I don't have his name written down, who gives a fuck, because I've been trying to limit the names, so I'm just like assaulting the listeners. Her husband's a dude, and like, so she's like 19, right? Her husband's about 70 years old, and Byron really courted fate with this one because he was an Italian politician and he was a fucking gangster, dude. There were some very, honestly, reasonable rumors that he had killed his political rivals before. But the nice thing is, there was also kind of a practice at the time in Italy where, obviously 70-year-old marrying a 19-year-old, it was a marriage of convenience. She got rich and he got connections through it. And there was kind of this practice of like, well, if you have a wife like that, they have a servant that follows them around. And so I think that at the time, their affair it wouldn't have been that controversial. So, I mean, there you go.
Okay, just to back this up slightly. Okay, who the fuck are we talking about? Who's the 70, who's the 19-year-old?
So the only one that matters is the 19-year-old, Teresa Guccioli, who will be... Yeah. And something interesting about her is I mentioned before the break that Byron had, well, not Byron, Augusta had she didn't completely cut off contact with Byron, but like when she did message him, it was very cold, very distant.
She dialed it back. Yeah.
And I don't think it's because we joked about like her and Annabella talking poorly about Byron. I don't think it's because she disliked Byron. I think it's just because she still lived in England.
I was going to say, it might be as simple as like, how much can I really expect in a letter-to-letter romance with someone who's, on the other side of the world, and it takes, 9 weeks for a fucking letter to go from place to place.
Yeah. Well, and also if the authorities caught wind that was still happening, she might be in danger. She might be imprisoned. Like bad things might happen. So I do want to establish that it wasn't just a simple breakup. There were a lot of factors that made their relationship difficult to maintain after he left. Back
in England, like, is the heat on to get Byron? Like, if he came back, would he be fucked? Would anyone care?
Okay, yeah. Once he leaves, but yeah, he's still very famous, and it is a high-profile exit. People aren't gunning to like drag him back to England and try him, but he never returns to England. And in some of his writings, he discusses that he kind of misses England. So I think the idea is that if he did go back, his life would be in danger.
Okay, yeah,
and yeah, because he loved Venice, but something we'll get into. Well, let's just actually get into it. So around this point, we're like, 1818. So he's 30 years old, basically. And he's kind of letting himself go. Percy Shelley actually meets up with him and later writes that he can't even see his knuckles for the fat in his hands. Like at this point, yeah.
Don't look like your portrait. Yeah.
Well, and part of the reason why is he's kind of losing his zest for life. Like he kind of misses England. Like he's getting distant from a lot of his friends. He doesn't get to see John Hobhouse as much, and he kind of gets this. He feels like he's missing out in the British social scene as well, because John Hobhouse actually becomes a pretty high profile politician and political speaker. And at some point, I don't remember who, but John Hobhouse writes an essay insulting a certain politician because John Hobhouse, like Byron, was a Whig, and he gets arrested for it temporarily. And it's funny, Byron's jealous. He's like, dude, this dude's like, I'm just a fucking poet, and this dude's actually out there doing shit. Because we mentioned early on in the first episode that Byron didn't initially want to be a famous poet. He did it because that's just something he was good at. And then he had life experiences and adjusted. But what he was always fascinated with were, like Napoleon, your Napoleons, your political revolutionaries and stuff. Those were the people that inspired him. And he started having this sense that like his life's kind of going downhill. Like or not like his life, but his fame. He's not really well, he is still extremely relevant, by the way, because something to mention at this point is that Napoleon Bonaparte at this point has been exiled. He's kind of lost his power. And so there is this sense that Byron's the man in Europe. Because, he leaves, it's funny, he leaves England, right? And huge scandal. The rest of Europe doesn't give a shit. He's already dude, he's already internationally famous at this point. So the second he leaves, like, Italian people are like...
I don't think we're at, like, cool gay Europe yet, but it's a lot less buttoned up than England, that's for sure.
It's cooler and gayer than England is. So, they go there and they're like, wait, people were mad about that?
Like, there's this other thing with Byron where when you're reading him, you're thinking about, like, other French authors and shit, you're like, I feel like he would have blended with the French. Like, I feel like if he would have gone down to Paris, he would have been treated just fine. Mm-hmm. Just something. It's that sort of French synthesis of like the intellectual and the erotic that I think would have worked out. But anyway, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think that even though Napoleon had been kind of cast out, I think France at that point was still a dangerous person to be an Englishman.
Sure. Politically. And also, like, it was a big L for all the Napoleon heads with Waterloo and shit,
Yeah.
I meant to correct earlier. The volcano, it wasn't Krakatoa. That was 1880s or something. The 1816 one was Mount Tambor, or Mount Tambora in Indonesia. And they called it the year without a summer. Or 1800 and freeze to death. That's my favorite. But anyway, slight correction. Back to Byron.
But yeah, so Byron is in Venice. He's having his relationship with Teresa Guccioli, and he's still very active. In fact, like at this point, this is when he writes most of his masterpieces. So he's by no means fading in his fame, but it's more like he wants something different out of life. Like he still writes poetry, and I think he kind of enjoys it, but I think he doesn't really want to be known as a poet. I think he wants to elevate his image even further and become something bigger, more political, more important.
This is the scary moment. This is the Hitler dropping out of art school moment. I'm sorry.
Imagine if his art sucked and he became prime minister at some point.
Right, exactly. The worse the artist, the better the politician, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I pointed to this fact where like a whole lot of like fascist leaders from the 20th century were failed artists, Mm-hmm. Joseph Goebbels was a failed playwright, Mussolini was a failed filmmaker, Hitler was, a failed artist, and you can kind of just like go down the list and of like prominent Nazi intellectuals or people like that were associated with that, and they all like tried to be something like a musician or a painter or whatever, and then like just were fucking bad at it, for one reason or another, and they got super fucking bitter, and they're like, in a world that doesn't like my shit, the world is wrong, and I will change it, Yeah,
well, it reminds me of this saying. It goes something along the lines of politics is for actors that were too ugly for Hollywood.
Ooh, like Ronald Reagan.
Like Ronald Reagan. Well, Nancy, well, Deep Throat, yeah.
Moving on.
But yeah, so I mentioned that this is the era of his masterpieces. In 1818, he starts writing Don Juan, which we've mentioned in both episodes, and it's kind of sad because, believe it or not, he actually never gets to finish Don Juan. He gets about 2/3 or a little bit more of the way through, and then eventually he passes away. And there are manuscripts left over of it, but it's still incomplete. And so, like I said, he's losing his zest for life. Percy Shelley's like, he's a fat ass now. and and
He's got nasty sausage fingers.
nasty sausage fingers. I mean, he was also probably an alcoholic, because he's 30. But I remember in our first episode when we talked about our favorite baby boy Osho, we mentioned that Osho died when he was 50, but like he had some street miles on him from his lifestyle. Byron has some street miles on him. He does not have the body of a 30-year-old man.
Yeah, he doesn't have his glowing youth from previous. He doesn't look like his paintings anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but eventually he meets a man by the name of Count Gamba, and because they end up brushing shoulders. And there's an interesting thing about Count Gamba.
Sick name. Very cool
name. So fucking awesome. By the way, I don't know why I said Lord Cynics. Being the Count of anything is so dope.
You want to be
or
a count?
Duke.
All right.
I want to be a count, or I don't even need property or like to lead people. I just want the name.
Way better to be a duke. I mean, a count has a county, which is all right, but a duke has a dukedom or a duchy, and that's a lot bigger. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, with great power comes great responsibility, though. Will, do you really think I'm, motivated enough to lead a duchy?
Dude, I wouldn't trust you with 3 horses. I mean, Jesus Christ.
But yeah, so through Count Gamba, he ends up kind of joining or being associated with this secret society called I have to say this because I almost, even when I'm reciting this to myself, I keep on calling it like a food, the Carbonari, not carbonara, the Carbonari. And so the Carbonari are kind of this secret group of wealthier, more influential people who ultimately want to unify Italy. So, just to give some historical context, to give some historical context, for a long time, even at this point, Italy wasn't it's not the border that we see nowadays. It was a collection of city-states, basically, and like smaller little like kingdoms, independent from one another, kind of like old Greece. But at this point, after the Napoleonic Wars, Austria owns a large part of Italy, and ironically, the imperialism there is what will eventually help them unify, because that invasion kind of gives them a national identity anyways. But so the Carbonari ultimately want to unify Italy. And in that society, Byron's like, oh, I feel something here. Like, this is different. Like, he keeps writing his poetry, but he feels like he's actually doing something that matters. And unfortunately, it doesn't work out, because the Carbonari gets completely disbanded and completely ripped to shreds. And by the way, at this point, he's no longer in Venice. He moved to Ravenna. But the issue is, because Gamba got found out and the Carbonari got found out, Gamba eventually, Count Gamba, gets exiled. So they end up going to Pisa together. But Percy Shelley ends up coming back and seeing Byron again, and he comments on his appearance, because suddenly Byron's kind of the old Byron that we know. He's
got his mojo
shape.
back from doing Italian nationalism. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And hanging out with Teresa Guccioli, dope fucking name, by the way.
He's like,
Count
I got this incredible Italian side piece, and also like maybe Italy is coming together. Also, secret societies. Who doesn't love that? So
oh yeah,
he's off the bench and into the game.
Now that they're in Pisa, something unfortunately bad happens. So one day, Mary Shelley knocks on. Oh, so before we get to that, Byron and Percy Shelley end up drafting their own boats. Or they end up getting boats, right? And one day, Mary Shelley knocks on Byron's door, and Byron's like, "Hey, what's up? Where's Percy?" And she's like, "I haven't seen him in 5 days since he went out to go sailing." And the issue is, Percy Shelley, unlike Byron, didn't know how to swim. So Byron panics, and they end up searching for him. And something like a couple days later, they end up finding his heavily decomposed body. And it's a huge blow to Byron. And, at some point, so Percy Shelley was an atheist and a pagan, whatever. He was outside of, much like Byron, outside of that like Christianity sphere of England. And because of that, they decide to cremate him on the beach instead of giving him a normal Christian burial. And another thing heavily affects Byron during this time too, which is, I mentioned that with Claire Claremont, Byron had Allegra, his arguably third or second daughter. Did I elaborate on why I'm saying that?
Why you're saying what?
Never mind. I definitely did. So historically, it's debated whether or not Byron, and if I did say this before, just please cut it. It's debated on whether or not Byron had 2 children or 3. So historically, Ada Lovelace was his first kid, and then Allegra was his third or his second. But there is some speculation that Augusta Byron's third child was his. There's no way to prove it though. So, but just some interesting historical context. So Claremont has been traveling with the Shelleys and Byron this whole time, and earlier on they
Is she
decided
the one
to give.
that eventually like tries to become friends with Mary Shelley and that whole thing?
Well, she was Mary Shelley's stepsister, so yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Yeah. So a little bit more about the Shelley thing is Shelley was friends with this guy who wanted to be like an amateur sailboat designer. And so he, with basically very little, if any, experience, decides that he's going to build, this sailboat and then take it, up the coast. And Shelley always admired sailing and thought it would be super fun to go out and do it. But like you said, couldn't swim. And so, Mary Shelley looked at Percy and was like, please, like, reconsider, like, please don't do this. Like, hey, I've got a bad feeling that if you go sailing with this absolute dipshit who thinks he can invent a sailboat, then you are gonna die. And he's like, I'll be fine, babe, fucking chill. And then he goes out and he drowns, and that's the end of the story. So,
which is tragic.
It is tragic because I think Percy Shelley was the better poet, and the stuff he would have made when he was older, I will just never know. But anyway, yeah, go on.
Yeah, so Claire Claremont, his child Allegra, as they're traveling, for some reason, Byron decides that he wants Allegra to be raised Catholic. And so they end up leaving Allegra to be raised at like a church, basically, with nuns. And unfortunately, his child ends up passing away, Allegra. And this is around the same time that Percy Shelley passes away as well. And I didn't really read about this at all, but there's something, I didn't show up in what I was reading is a better way to put it. But I think that Byron, I don't think he gets suicidal, but I think that he starts to feel indifferent about whether or not he lives or dies. Mm-hmm. Like, he's losing friends. He can't go back to England. His second child passes away. He's estranged from his ex-wife and his first child. And he starts to be like 18-year-old Byron again, very reckless. And this only goes further when the Greek War of Independence starts. At some point, Greece started a revolution where they started fighting against the Ottoman Empire. And the leaders of that revolution reach out to Byron because there are contacts that he had through Gamba, where they're like, do you want to come support us? Do you want to come help us? And it's funny, when I first started reading about Byron for our first episode, people are like, oh, he's a revolutionary and a martyr for Greek independence. And then I read about how he died, and I kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, yeah, sure. No, he's more like, what the Kardashian in that Pepsi commercial where she like gives a Pepsi to a cop to end racism. Yeah, that's what I thought going into it. It turns out he was actually very helpful and very important in the revolution for more than just symbolic reasons. So this is 1823, so Byron is 35. He's got about a year left in him, spoiler alert, and he ends up sailing from Genoa to Missolonghi. We mentioned in the first episode, Missolonghi is a place that he passes on his way to Albania. And little did Byron know at the time that would be the eventual place where his life ends.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so he ends up showing up. And he starts paying for artillery and shit. Like, something to note is that he liquidates almost all of his assets in England and starts throwing money towards the Greek Revolution.
A pioneer in the classic Western hobby of showing up at a war and then just purchasing weapons for your favorite side.
Although he didn't just spend money on weapons, he also spent a lot of money on opulent military uniforms for him and his friends.
Hell yeah. Let's get some furs, some capes, some scepters, some turbans. Yep. Let's fucking do it.
Listen, even in a revolution, Byron's got to flex a little bit.
Jewel encrusted scabbard, yeah. Tactical tobacco pipe.
Well, yeah, and so the Greek leadership is like, come to Missolonghi, because bear in mind, Missolonghi's in a very bad place. It's being besieged from both land and from sea. And so Byron comes up with his people, and they end up breaking the sea blockade. And they end up fighting. Well, he doesn't fight, but like the troops end up fighting. Also, the troops were super fucking excited that he was there. Do you want to know why?
Why, Richard?
Because they weren't earning any money fighting in this war because they couldn't get the money to them. Byron's paying their wages.
Cool. All
which
right.
is pretty fucking cool.
It's a nice thing to get paid.
Yeah,
audience, it's a fine thing to get paid.
Oh yeah. So there's this issue though. Missolonghi has it's a little bit of a shithole at the time. Mostly because of the war, but so they have a huge issue with mosquitoes. Now, so Byron is just kind of sitting on his boat. He's hanging out, and it's funny. Do you want to know what his final poem was about, or his final writings?
Tummy ache?
No, it was about how now he's like kind of an old guy and he's not as attractive, and little Greek boys don't like him anymore.
Oh, what? That is so sad. That brings a tear to the eye. Yo, thinking that those little 9-year-olds can't be enticed anymore. God, why live?
Well, hey, to Byron's, I don't even know why I'm saying this out loud, but to Byron's credit, he was more into teenagers, not 9 years old. I don't know why I'm saying that that's like a good thing. I don't know.
I'm starting to feel a lot less bad about the whole like Byron died young thing. The Shelley died young thing, like, yeah, I'm sad. The Byron died young, it's like maybe that spared some people some victimization.
Byron's a pretty bad person. He's just a beautiful artist. But it's funny because he makes advances on like one of the servants there, and they're like, and for the first time in Byron's life, he's like an older man now. The dude's like, he's probably like 16. He's like, I don't really like you like that. And Byron's like, okay.
The aura loss from getting rejected after 20 years of just having it thrown at your feet. He didn't die of a broken heart. He died of critical mojo depletion.
I was about to say, well, that's the thing is he died like less than 6 months after that. So I think that it might have just been the fact that he can't. Never mind. Moving on. Just so. I just had to slip that in there at the end of the episode. So I mentioned that, like I said, he actually is instrumental in the revolution, and I actually do respect his involvement in that way more than I did before I looked into this stuff. But anyways, I mentioned that there was a mosquito problem. Eventually, Byron falls ill with a fever, and it progresses and it progresses, and they start like bleeding him with leeches and shit, like they do bloodletting. And believe it or not that helpful. It's not really doing him any favors. So as he's dying, he's kind of slipping in and out of consciousness. And, he says Augusta's name. He says Hobhouse's name. Like, he's losing grip to this mortal plane. And unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it by the end of this episode, in April 19th, 1824, Byron dies on that boat at the age of 36. So after he dies, they go in there and people are shocked because losing Byron, it's like, I don't even know. Celebrity culture is so prevalent now that I don't even know what to compare it to. Because when celebrities die, you hear about it every other day. In the span of 3 days, I heard that Hulk Hogan and Ozzy Osbourne died. And I'm just so desensitized to it at this point that I'm just surprised that anybody's alive. But to them, Byron was like the Ubermensch. Like, Byron was this invincible mythological figure, and the world, or at least Europe, I'm sure some random dude in China probably didn't give a fuck, but like, or even no, but like
there were a couple billion people that didn't give a flying fuck at all about Byron. Yeah.
I love how we're ending this episode with just hissing on his grave.
I'm sorry.
But we'll get to the complimentary parts. So his body gets returned to England, and John Hobhouse is there to help. So initially, John Hobhouse wants him to be buried in the Westminster Abbey's Poets' Corner, but they're like, no, dude, they're like, he's a fucking nasty bitch, dude. We're not burying him in there.
He's a
Like,
butthole liker. We're not fucking doing that.
but he likes buttholes, dude. We both know he went down, not up. You know what I'm saying?
First of all, there's a lot of butthole enjoyers in Poets Corner. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. There were probably a lot of butthole enjoyers that said Byron couldn't be buried there.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So instead of the Westminster Abbey's Poets Corner, he ends up getting buried at St. Mary Magdalene Church in Nottinghamshire, which also a very British name. And, you know, an era ended with him. Like, you could almost say that the death of Byron is kind of the last dying gasps of the Regency era of the Romantic movement in England, you know, because things change a lot and switch to the Victorian era. But I got to ask, Will, now that you heard the story, what do you think? What do you think about Byron?
I mean, I kind of suspected with Byron as someone who has read not a great deal, but some amount of his poetry that, you know, beneath the character of Byron, you know, the lone, tortured, romantic genius at war with himself and the universe, and so on, that there was basically a damaged child, you know, at the center of that onion. And yeah, so without a doubt, that part's true. And then, like, you pop the hood and you see the bad behavior, the unstable relationships, the borderline personality disorder stuff. And, you know, you definitely feel bad for the women that got caught, you know, in his web. Like that woman who, you know, started cutting herself in public, right? What was her name?
Lamb.
Caroline Lamb, thank you. You know, it's like, would that have happened to her if Byron hadn't sort of encouraged her or pushed her towards that? You know, I don't know. But it seems like there was a trend and a pattern of that, and that Byron was addicted to the feeling of power and influence that he had. And, you know, politically, right, the association with Napoleon, in the last episode I talked about, like, the difference between Beethoven and Byron. And Beethoven was someone who admired the ideals that Napoleon pretended to stand for when he was still a revolutionary hero in France. And then the moment that Napoleon actually betrayed those ideals by crowning himself emperor, Beethoven was completely done with him and, you know, recanted and changed tack completely. Whereas with Byron, that never happened. And so as a result, you know, there's an ugly legacy there politically. But, you know, it's like Byron always seemed that he was searching for the biggest thing, right? Whether that was, you know, the political thing with Napoleon / you know, the Greek War for independence, or whether it was, you know, the spirits and demons of his own imagination, you know, the evil god or force, the agency of the universe, as he calls it in Manfred, that he's trying to reach out to. He's just living life 24/7 on the extremes, and he's got a hell of a life.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't take away from him his achievements. I mean, he is a spectacular poet. His use of the English language has made a very deep impression. And I have had tremendous experiences thinking about some of the things Byron has worked on, and it has definitely given me a picture of a life that is admittedly very, very different from my own, right? So, you know, like, personally, I'm very much a different human being than Byron, but in terms of a portrait that's created, it's something that definitely has my attention. So I guess that's my bottom line on Byron.
Well, I like what you said about, like, his you know, the trauma he suffered early on with Agnes Grey, that, you know, we mentioned her before. That nursemaid that took care of him and abused him as well. Byron would actually later reflect on that way later in life. And he writes at some point, and I don't have it written down, so this isn't an exact quote, but he basically says, "My proclivities started at a very early age, so early that if I told you, you wouldn't believe me." And at face value, like, that could be interpreted, if you didn't know any of the context, as like a humble brag or something weird. But that's not at all how I interpreted it. It's, like I said, he gets very reflective later in his life. And I do think that he has some regrets. about how he, not necessarily like he's empathizing with the victims of his own behavior, but it's like he just looks back on his life and just thinks like much like Manfred, he accepts himself for what it is, well, for what he is, which is a bad man. And there are moments where like I just do feel sorry for him. Like I feel bad for him. Because, like it's I feel way worse for the people that were affected by him, mind you. But like, yeah, Byron was just a tortured, complicated person. And that's part of the reason why I don't know if I would say I had so much fun studying him, but like why I was so fascinated by him reading about him. Like he's, he's capable of producing beauty and really interesting pieces of media that spoke to me. Me as a person who doesn't even really go out of his way to read poetry, I found myself just absorbed into a lot of his poems, especially Manfred, which you recommended to me. And yeah, like I'm glad we got to do this. I don't know. Like it was a very interesting exercise for me.
Yeah, and I mean Byron is with the child abuse leading into the pedophilia. It just kind of an example of like the harm that is done to you as a young person, can you then perpetuate it yourself? And it's like Byron had just the worst childhood, and it was really common back in the day. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last episode or if it was in the episode that we scrapped, but there's this FX show, A Christmas Carol. It's like 2.5 hours long or something, and it has Guy Pearce playing Scrooge, and it kind of shows that the origin of Scrooge as Scrooge is that his father basically sold him to the guy that ran his boarding school when he was a young man, and that he would stay over the winter season with this headmaster who would like sexually abuse him. And so then, you have this like reappraisal of Scrooge, who has just been doing shitty things for the entire movie, right? And it's like, well, how do we think of all of Scrooge's obvious bad behavior, given that this is what happened to him? And I think you kind of have to ask yourself the same thing with Byron. But yeah, I mean, it's like you can't let Byron off the hook for everything because bad shit happened to him. It's clear that he developed this kernel of enjoyment around these really depraved sexual practices, and that he didn't have much real warmth or caring, especially for women. So yeah, definitely a bad role model. But
he also became, like you said, like he didn't have any affection for women. He also was like incapable of receiving it. Like he became much like Scrooge, like he became so much of a cynic and so much of a nihilist that he couldn't even take people's affection seriously. Annabella Milbank loved Byron, and she was a good woman. And like in maybe in a different world, they could have been like a Percy and Mary Shelley. Like, but Byron can't do that. Byron can't stay in one place, and Byron can't have purity in his life. He needs to destroy. He needs to move on. It's kind of like the Tower Tarot card. Like he needs to just obliterate things and start over repeatedly, because that's all he really understands and knows.
Well, I think we'll leave it there then. So that's the final word on Lord Byron.
Well, I'd like to say, for those of you who made it this far, thank you for listening, and I look forward to doing more episodes in the future. Will, what do you think the next episode is going to be?
David Lynch. Yeah.
I'm so excited for that one. I won't spill the beans too much on what we're going to do, but I'm very looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Rich and I, like all weird white guys, have really enjoyed David Lynch's work, and with his passing earlier this year. I've also read David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish, which is a short little book about creativity and meditation. Lynch was a lifelong student of transcendental meditation and basically talked about it like every chance he got. So we'll be talking about that. I do want to say just a little bit of like information and housekeeping. So the History of Philosophy audio archive is the feed that I am going to keep as the main feed, the ad-free, non-commercialized feed. And Richard and I now have our own podcast where you will hear the full-length episodes going into the future, called Bad Role Models. It's up on Spotify and YouTube. And so
Apple Podcasts.
And Apple Podcasts for all you Apple iPhone people.
For the 5 people that use that.
yeah. It's anyway. If you own an Apple product, I don't hate you. Don't worry. But anyway, the podcast will be available over there. On this feed, we are going to post the first 30 minutes and then a link over to that other one. So if you see that in the future, that's what's going on. And make sure you follow that podcast so you see it in your Spotify feed when it pops up. So with that, I think we'll leave it. Just saying goodbye to the audience for now.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And try to be as non-Byronic as you possibly can.
Yeah.
If I can leave you with anything.
Go watch Blue Velvet and get even more freaked out. It would be my recommendation.
God.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right. That's it.
Okay. Peace out, everybody.